Hey guys, welcome back. Meta Trends with Mark and Mike. We're here with Matt Garrett. The Matt Garrett. Let me just put this in perspective, Mike. The Vistage called me and told me there are only 16 people who have done more presentations than me on planet Earth. Matt is one of them. So I've done just shy of 900, maybe just north of 900 presentations. Matt, you've done 2,000.
I'm in that zone somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see like the worn look on your face for all of it. Like, how many times have you gotten your ass kicked, in a Vistage meeting?
Lots of airline miles.
Yeah, lots of airline miles, and nothing kicks your ass like airline miles. So
No.
so the what I wanted you on for is because, we appeal to 2 different marketplaces. The entrepreneur market, people who are in their 20s, 30s that always wanted to own a business, and then, the entrepreneur market, people who've been in it and, like, now know what they've gotten themselves into, and uneasy lies the crown, as they say. So my argument is that people like myself and you that have been exposed to so many Vistage members, it's almost like we've done the market research for the entrepreneurs because we can tell which are the stronger business models, which are the weaker business models, which ones kind of make sense to get into, that type of thing. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what got you where you are now, and then what are you seeing in those two marketplaces?
Sure. Yeah. What got me to where I am now? I've never had a boss since I graduated college. I did when I was in college, but since college, I started my own stuff right off the bat. I started a .com back in 1996. Built that up and sold it in 99 to a public company out of Atlanta. And it was like a for lack of a better term, we called it a catalog aggregator at the time, which used to get catalogs in the mail, and we digitized them all for these catalog companies and put them on one single shopping site called iShop Here. iShopHere.com was the site way back when. And that was a really cool experience of just leading edge technology at the time and starting my first what I would call big boy business. Where it was really, we had investors and stuff and I made tons and tons of mistakes, but learned a lot from that. So I sold my share in that in January of 99. And then it took a couple of years to try to figure out what I wanted to do next. I knew I wanted to do another business, but I didn't know what. I also knew that I needed to know accounting because accounting is the language of business. And I didn't know anything about accounting at all. So I went to night school for accounting and took a few classes. And I had a CPA at the time, and I just volunteered my time for free to prep tax returns so that I could learn it because I thought tax and accounting were the same thing. I learned very quickly they are not. But that was a really good experience in learning and just kind of growing into figuring out what I wanted to do next. I saw a huge opportunity to go out and start a tax consulting firm. So a lot of people were prepping tax returns. Very few people were actually examining old tax returns and saying, well, what went wrong and what can we do to save you money in taxes? And at the time, early 2000s, there were still a lot of tax loopholes for small businesses. And so I said, we're going to do, Fortune 500 style tax consulting for small companies and went out and started doing that, built that business up over the next 5 years, 4 years, but started in '01, I guess. And sold that to a public company out in New York called National Financial Partners in July of 2005. Between '01 and '05, I had learned accounting enough that I knew kind of what I wanted to see, and I fired 7 bookkeepers. It was, um, I could not get a bookkeeper to do things on time. I couldn't get them to like, there were things like, oh, oops, sorry, yeah, I missed your credit card payment. That was the obvious, you can't be here. That's ridiculous. But then there were ones that didn't, just bookkeepers couldn't answer. Like, why do I have negative AR? What's that all about? Negative accounts receivable doesn't exist in accounting. How can I have that? And they'd be like, I don't know, I put it into QuickBooks, right? So after I sold the business in '05, I knew there was a huge missing piece to give small and mid-sized business owners accurate and timely financial data at a cost that made sense. And it was like, well, you hire a bookkeeper for $1,500 a month, or you hire a CFO for $250,000 a year, like nothing in between. And so from that, I started what I do today, which is run TGG, which is it's an outsourced accounting firm We're about 225 employees now, about 500 clients nationwide. And we built out a full accounting department for people. So the data entry, the more complicated accounting, the forecasting and benchmarking, and then the CFO level strategy and consulting, and all four roles for people on a part-time basis. So you're never paying for more than you need in a given month of time. So it's the most cost efficient way to get the quality that you need out of accounting department, because one person can't check their errors, and otherwise, you're either overpaying or underpaying and not getting what you need. So that's the business. We found a huge opportunity and market there to really help business owners see what's going on in their financials. And it's been a really fun ride for the last, I don't know, whatever that is, 17, 18 years.
Sounds awesome. So what are you seeing out in the marketplace? Like let's say you were just starting out again, fresh out of college, and you were looking to build your own business. What like because frankly, so let me back up. There was a guy in out of Claremont in California that I
Mhm.
tripped over, and he Claremont, when you go through it for to become an accountant, they don't teach you how to do audits.
Huh.
Right? So one of the few institutions that doesn't do that. So he got hired by a big six accounting firm, and they put him out into the field and realized quickly he didn't know how to do any audits. So he says that they basically said you're useless. So here's what I'm suggesting for you to do. You're gonna go meet with the CEOs, find out what's wrong, and then we're gonna send out someone that actually knows what they're doing to actually solve whatever they're up against, right? But what that did was that put him in a position where he was actually doing case study work.
Yep.
Which one of these business models makes the most sense to open a business in? He figured that out, quit his big six accounting firm, went into that, and went into this really obscure acquiring low end warehousing via limited partnerships. And the guy's worth close to $100 million now.
Yep.
So when you sit back and look at it and go, I'm thinking someone like yourself, someone like myself are in the position to do that for other people too, because we've
Yeah.
seen the businesses kind of firsthand. Then you throw in the consulting work. We can see what does it take in order to get to that next level. Maybe not what it takes to actually get to, I guess what you call maybe investment grade company, but how do you start the whole process right? So
Yeah.
if it was you, you're 20 years old. You're Noah's our producer here. You're Noah. What are you thinking based on your vast experience that which ones make the most sense? Which businesses?
Well, I think it's interesting, and Mark, I don't know if you've seen this too, but I'm always amazed in like places like Vistage and EO and YPO and places like this at the businesses that people have. It's like, you do what? Like, we core apples. Like, you core apples. It's all you do. That's all we do. What are your revenues? 150 million. Okay. There's
Yeah.
just people who do all kinds of stuff that you're like, huh, really? Okay. So I think as I thought about this question, you asked me about this, and I've been thinking about it. If I were to start a business, from scratch, uh, there are a couple of industries I would avoid. But I'm not sure that I would say, and I think that there are some things in the future that are definitely going to be changing the way we do business. A la the internet, when I got involved,
Yeah.
back in 1896, was just pretty brand new. And people, the biggest worry people had when I was starting was like, nobody will ever share their credit card information online. Well, here we are today. You put it into your phone, like, it, it- so I think as I think about it, I think, there's a couple things that I would say. First of all, is just go start. The earlier you start, the more mistakes you'll make, and it's better to make them early when you don't have much to lose than when you're older and you got families and house payments and car payments and all these things, and it's a lot tougher to lose because you're gonna lose. I lost. I mean, I've made so many mistakes, and so somebody said, Matt, yesterday, who was talking to me, like, your business career was like a phoenix. You just kept coming back. I'm like, well, it's just business, right? You just keep moving.
Yeah.
And so I would say, start early. Don't wait. Don't think you need a bunch of experience, because at the end of the day, you're going to get that experience by doing things more than you will by trying to see other people do them. The second thing, I mean, if you could get the job that that guy had of interviewing CEOs, it'd be fantastic. The second thing I would say is I would avoid typical kind of labor intensive service business, a la an engineering firm, an architecture firm, a firm like mine, even, it's dramatically changing. Things like blockchain, AI are, if you think about a law firm as a simple example, lawyers are going to need about law firms are going to need about 30% of the attorneys that they need today, just in terms of reviewing documents, because AI can review a document like that.
Yeah.
Whereas an attorney, it takes that attorney to read it, 2, 3, 4 hours. AI can read it with more accuracy than a human
Mhm.
being in one thousandth of the time. So the pricing models are going to have to change in those businesses over the next 10 years, and that's going to be very challenging for people who are going into those businesses. So I would stay away from people heavy service business kind of stuff. I would go into something that has more leverage to it, like unique. I see people all the time doing really unique manufacturing, super high end, something that only they make, and they make one, two pieces or parts that go into a bigger thing, but their pieces and parts are tough to make and tough to procure, and take a lot of capital to get into it. Those are things that I think are really protected in the future as we move forward. And then other things, I just think people, there's so many ways to make money in the world. It's insane.
It's
Um,
insane.
one of the big things that I would say is look for the lifestyle, not what you love to do. Everybody says, "Oh, follow your passion." Maybe, but maybe your passion should be the life you want to lead. How much
Mhm.
time you want off? Where do you want to live? What are the people you want around you? What's the lifestyle you want? And then get yourself into a business that can allow for that lifestyle eventually. And not all businesses require a tremendous amount of hustle in the beginning, but eventually, what do you want your lifestyle to look like, and how's that going to work? Um, that to me is almost a more important question than what you're passionate about.
Well, it's funny too because you hear that, oh, follow your passion, follow your passion. I think that's actually comes from what some people refer to as the winner's dilemma. You know what I mean? Like you see it in the award shows or what, regardless of the field the person's in, we tend to interview the winners.
Yeah,
We don't interview the people who slogged at it for years. Yet the majority of all major innovation, like whether it's scientific or whatever, I'll give you an example. I heard this question from Steven Pinker, who's my favorite author. So he writes books on how the mind works and yada yada. And he asked the question, who saved more lives, Norman Borlaug, Bill Gates, or Mother Teresa? And almost nobody gets it. It's a trick question. It's Norman Borlaug. So Norman Borlaug spent 30 years at Iowa State cross-pollinating different breeds of grain because he recognized, like if you've ever gone to a stadium or a concert, everybody stands up to get a better view, and they end up with the exact same view they had if they all sat. Right? So when you're a farmer, uh, the plants actually are striving to get taller than the other plants to get the sunlight, yet they don't need that when it's a farm because then there
yeah,
are no other plants, right? So he figured out that how could he get them to stop putting so much energy into the stalk, just enough energy to hold the bounty where it doesn't fall over and kill itself by accident. So the bounty had to be a certain weight to
yeah,
not pull it over, and the stalk had to be just big enough just to keep the bounty up there where it absorb enough sunlight. So he actually personally changed Southeast Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Mexico from chronic famine zones into net exporters of grain.
mm,
So he's credited with saving 2 billion lives.
yeah.
So
That's
now
incredible.
he's like in obscurity, what have you. So there are certain professions where, like my own, it's the income ends up like a hockey stick as opposed to the straight line. So
Yes.
part of it, I think, is having the right attitude, like the right, the right expectation. And I think there's even something. I think maybe you'd agree with this. I think Mike, you're guilty of it also. Is I don't know if anyone on this phone call is employable.
No,
You know what I
I'm
mean?
not.
Like, I know I'm not. So the argument is I can't work for somebody else, so it means I have to kinda work for myself. So how do I set that up? So I like your analogy of make it about a lifestyle. However, most businesses, if they're gonna experience an extreme valuation exit, it can't be about lifestyle. It can't be about, like, minimizing profitability for tax purposes. It has to be kinda the other way. So
Right.
that there's some trade-offs in all of this that I think are important to be aware of also.
Yeah, I guess you're 100% right. When I talk about lifestyle, I mean ultimately where you want to get with your lifestyle, right? If you decide, for example, I use the lawyer example because I used it before. You want to be a lawyer. Um, After law school, you're going to pass the bar. You're going to work your tail off to pass the bar. Okay, great. Now you're going to go into a legal field that requires you to bill an hour. Okay. The only way you make more money is to bill more hours or have a higher bill rate. That's it.
For
The
both, yeah.
only two variables. And
Yeah.
so your bill rate is going to be limited by your market value. And then the rest is all just how many hours you're going to work. Well, if you don't want to work a ton of hours, you shouldn't be a lawyer.
Yeah,
That's
well said.
that's just what it is. But I believe in business, it's a little bit different where you can say, hey, we all have to hustle and work our tails off, but there can be a light at the end of the tunnel where you can architect the business in a way where you're not working the same hours 10 years from now. I think I remember this from a Tim Ferriss podcast years and years ago where he said, it was really impactful for me. He goes, we all way overestimate what we can accomplish in a year and way underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. And for me, I kind of live on the property of lifetime compound interest. Like everything in my life is compound interest, relationships, money, business. I may only be making $10 today, but if I make $11 tomorrow and then $12, and then I can just complete the compounding effect over time on over time, that's where you get that hockey stick. The hockey stick doesn't come from all of a sudden, sales growth going through the roof. It's like that compound interest of whatever you've done over the last year and year and year and year and year and year and year. Then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I got a lot here. Doesn't seem
Yeah.
like a lot of incremental improvement, but it is.
And I just want to clarify one point for Mark. I am an elected official, so I'm employable, sir. I have to go to the ballot. They had to elect me in November.
Yeah, but you're a Miami Dolphins fan, so you got that against you too.
I got elected 50% of the vote for candidate race. But the point is, I agree in terms of, and I apologize when I look down. I'm taking a lot of notes because I actually want to come back and revisit certain points that you made. But it is the lifestyle. And there are folks, maybe not Zers yet because they're still not mature enough in the workforce, but a lot of millennials that especially saw, and I'm on the older end of the millennial generation that saw, we had 9/11, we had jobs disappear, we had a financial crisis, instability in our federal government. Regardless of who's in the Oval Office, we've had a lot of instability. And there are folks that were at the time before the emerging of AI and all these technologies, which frankly, for folks in my field, is pretty scary. And it doesn't matter whether you're a communications consultant, like I am, a reporter, like the ones that I've worked with. You Your future in that profession depends upon how good AI does at doing the job that you often are called upon to do. So I wanted to make that point because it's industry specific. Although I'm not only focusing on my industry, broader though. If you are the parent of a child in middle school right now, and you are seeing the trends in our economy, and you're seeing that what worked 10 years, just 10 years ago, not even 30 or 40, 10 years ago, is probably not going to be what they will encounter.
Yes.
What do you encourage and I know you have entrepreneurs that watch this, but in general, some folks are watching that they're in their 20s or 30s, they're having kids or thinking of having it. What do you do to better prepare your children? I'm sorry, I'm taking this in a different direction, but for the economy that they will inevitably step into.
Mhm. Look, it's a fascinating question, and I definitely don't have the right answer, but I have enough family experience here to share on this. So I have a 19-year-old daughter who's in college in New York in film school. I have a 17-year-old who's a junior in high school, and I have a 2.5-year-old daughter. So I'm thinking about all these things, Michael. um, my 19-year-old, we've spent a lot of time talking about fiscal responsibility and doing our books. In fact, over the Christmas break, we're gonna, uh, as soon as the new year hits, we're gonna set up TurboTax for her and walk through TurboTax because she's got a job and now you file the taxes and like very practical things. I think everybody with you at the 17-year-old level, my kids have always gotten It's not an allowance. I call it a pay. Okay. And you're getting paid to do certain things. And that might be great. It's whatever's responsibility for them as the kid that is their quote unquote job. And I want them to feel that way. And then I want them to use that money and have a credit card and those sorts of things and then pay it off and start to recognize the fact that whether it's a business or a government you're alluding to earlier, or your personal life, you can't spend more money than you make. So let's get the fundamental discipline of spending less than you make and putting something aside to invest for the future. And that's going to work whether you're in a business, whether it's your personal life, or whatever you do as an elected official. Right? We're going to have these limitations, and how do you work within those and be successful? The second thing that I've told my 17-year-old, she's like, "Well, Dad, I want to do business," And even my 19-year-old who's in film school, I said the most important thing you can learn about film is having all the contacts you need so to get the best people in, because people make businesses happen. And number two, understand the budgetary process. You are creative. You already have that part of learn the other parts that are so hard for creative people to get, and you'll be indispensable. You'll be someone who can help with all that stuff. And my 17-year-old wants to go into real estate and do other things like that I've done. And I said that you got to take accounting classes. Start with understanding the language of business and then move on. As for the 2.5-year-old, Michael, which is I think more of where the question goes to, I have no idea. I even told my 17-year-old, she wants to play volleyball in college, and she's not going to go to the world, like the top D1 schools, but she's also very sharp in school and good straight A's. And I said, you need to think about places that you might not want to, you might not think are the best volleyball schools, like a Caltech or an MIT or an Ivy or something like that, and go study a technology. Go study what's happening in blockchain and AI, because computer programming is also dying. It's not you don't need to learn a programming language. You need to see where the future is going with some of this stuff. And then my girlfriend and I talk about the 2.5-year-old, and we see my 17-year-old on her phone all the time, like pissed off and trying to deal with that. And it's like, you can't be on your phone all the time. And what are we going to do with the 2.5-year-old? I said, I have no idea, but it won't be the phone, because the phone wasn't even around. The iPhone wasn't even around when my 19-year-old was born. So there's no idea that we'll even know what it is, where they go. But you're right, Michael, the world is going to change. And I think the combination of AI and blockchain gives me tremendous hope and a little bit of fear, because it's hope for efficiency and effectiveness. That's what's going to get us out of some of the issues that we're in. And it's fear that people are going to use it in dumb ways like the internet, right? But I think it's way more powerful than the
If I could jump in here for a minute, Mike. The deal is like, so there's a couple of books I'd recommend for you, Matt, if you're open to it.
Sure.
The first one is Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation.
Okay.
The second one is Jonathan Haidt's The Coddling of the American Mind. So according to him, we really screwed up our kids, mainly because the baby boomers were rebellious against their parents, angry at their parents for being crappy parents. So then what happens is they kind of overcorrected and made and overparented their kids. So now not only do we have this massive opportunity of so many companies going to change hands in the next 15 years, we don't have the next population who can take over.
Sure.
Because mammalian adolescents require free play in order to become adults. And when's the last time you saw any child have free play? So it's like we schedule everything for them. So if there's a beef, like you and I are on the playground at 13 years old and we have a beef, we turn to the authority figures to settle all our disputes. So the dilemma is that means we can't negotiate with other human beings anymore. That's one thing. The second thing is that, Mike, to your point earlier, is am I worried about the next generation? The answer is yes. But there's a moral obligation that every person has in today's society. And that means we have to reinvent ourselves once every 5 years. See, one of the things I beat up politicians for is they cannot afford to tell us the truth. They can't tell us that person who doesn't speak English and can come in and take my job, that's my fault. I have a moral obligation to stay relevant. Politician can't tell me that and hope I'll vote for them. So what happens is they got to dance around this issue, where the real deal is we need an ethos of personal responsibility. I am the sum total of every decision I've ever made. So as soon as I make that declaration and live it, now I can fix whatever I'm up against. So part of this is for the younger crowd, it's like, how do I become a mature adult despite the fact society is set up the exact opposite for that? Then we get into, okay, what are the best ways for me to take my energies? Because if I can lead and I'm a millennial, or I can lead and I'm Gen Z or Gen Alpha, I am rare. I can eat everybody else's lunch. And this is so, in every threat, there's a massive opportunity. The massive opportunity in this is for those people who are willing to step up to become leaders and to become risk takers. They can eat everybody else's lunch because there's going to be so few people who will qualify for that, because in Western democracy, we're overparenting our children. So
So the question is to both of you then, what would you say are the skills that these teens becoming 20 somethings and even late 20s or becoming 30 somethings? I'm out of both categories, just for the record. I'm in my 40s now. But what would you say these skills, the most important skills they should be working on to launch their businesses? I know that what Matt was saying, Matthew, excuse me, was saying was understanding finances, certainly being able to create an extensive network and understanding the business process. But the skills that, from what I've read, certain podcasts I've listened to, one of them has to be people skills. That as the technology becomes better at doing what humans have been doing for decades, you need to still be, you need to actually increase your ability to communicate face to face with individuals, which is always hard when you have a stupid phone with alerts coming on. So that's something I'm working on with my own kids and my wife. But what other skills would you say are necessary to be a successful entrepreneur moving forward, given where everything's going and going so quickly? Where in 18 months, one technology that just came on, it's not obsolete, but it's been replaced by even better technology.
if I can interrupt here for a second, it's a great question. What I want to do is I want to cover it on the other platform. So this is like, so when we get to the half an hour mark of this, so the first half hour sits on a YouTube and appeals to entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. The second half hour is really just for entrepreneurs. So what we've done is we've given that second half an hour to the middle market forum. So please join us over there. And Matt, if you want to take the first crack at this, I'll glom on, or vice versa.
Yeah. Would you? So would you like me to try to answer Michael's question?
Sure.
Or
Exactly.
yeah. Uh,